Hi guys, how's everybody doing today? I thought today we would do a cow using materials that we have laying around the house. So you'll notice here's an example of one of the cows that I did using some newspaper, and then I had some black construction paper that I used for dots. And with this one, you'll notice that I really got bold and creative with the colors I used, adding some patterns. Here again, I used newspaper and then went back with acrylic paint. Today I'm going to show you guys how to do this with watercolors. But the key is, especially while we are on lockdown during this interesting period of time, we got to use the materials we have. And this is where we have to really be creative and flexible and just think about some of the materials that we have. So if I don't have newspaper, I might find that I can use a brown paper bag, and here I just cut a piece of a brown paper bag. This could be the background. This is actually if you don't have construction paper lying around. You could use a brown paper bag. Maybe you just have typing paper, and that would work great too. We'll just make sure that we add lots of color with either crayons or markers, watercolor, whatever you decide to use. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my reference photo here. I love making cows, and those of you that know anything about me as an artist, you know that I like making cows. Maybe it's because I come from the Midwest and it stems back to my Midwest roots, but they bring me a lot of joy. And as I'm looking at this cow, what I'm going to do is sort of break down the basic shapes. And I know that he's got this real elongated face. And if you look down at their nose, they have this sort of boxy nose down here that really differentiates a cow from, say, a dog. The other thing is their ears usually go right off the side of their head. And often those eyes are right along next to those ears. And those are the things that usually tell us that this is a cow. But what's fun about doing a cow like this is we can use our imagination and we can make it however we want. And it'll be fun to see what you guys come up with. So I'm going to show you just by drawing first. If I were to draw a cow, I would start out probably with just an oblong shape like this, an oval. And what I like to do is go back up and just sort of make almost like a pointed part of the head. Their heads are usually a little bit pointier at the top. And then I might come in along the side of that oval. So it's now more of these two lines coming in. And then at the bottom of the oval, I'm going to draw a shape that kind of goes off to the side like this. And then I'm going to go back and round off the corners. Okay, and you can see where that starts to look like the cow's nose. And then if you look very closely, we can see almost like this little half circle underneath. And that finishes off the cow's mouth. Okay. Now to do the ears, remember we're going to do them sort of off to the side, and where we went off to the side from our oval originally, those are about where the ears are going to go. And I'm going to do this little elongated, almost like a teardrop shape on either side. Okay, and then I can make those eyes, and often they're right along the side of the head. And I think what is so cute about doing cows, you can often see their eyelashes. So I like to come down with a line going on top, just like this, to finish them off. And then now if you notice, each of these examples of a cow, you just have a line going off to the side and down here, suggesting the body. Okay? So this is basically what we're going to do using newspaper. And if you don't have newspaper, you can cut it out of regular typing paper, brown bags, whatever you've got. If you've got scrapbook paper, just get creative with the materials you have. Okay, so I have a piece of construction paper that I'm going to start with my for my background, and I also have some newspaper which I cut into little pieces. What's fun about using newspaper is really you can look through and find all kinds of colorful prints. Sometimes there's a crossword puzzle. Sometimes, oh, look at that, an orca. You can use those as part of the design of your cow, or you might want to stick just with the text. And those are all choices that you can make as you're making your cow. I'm going to start off again with that sort of elongated oval shape. And then remember how I said we want to make the head a little bit more pointy, and then come in on the sides. And now I'm just going to cut that out. So the bottom, it doesn't matter because I'm going to overlap the nose in just a minute. But I want to have this sort of pointy head. And I'm going to lay that down. Okay. Actually, I'm going to bring that in just a little bit. Okay. And I think that's kind of interesting with some bolder text on top. Oh, maybe I'll use the crossword for his mouth. What do you guys think? So what I'm going to do, I can even start out just making it into sort of this rectangle shape and rounding off the corners at the bottom. And then I'm going to cut in on each side and round off the corners. Okay, and that kind of makes a nice squared off mouth shape. Okay, and now for the bottom of his mouth, I'm going to do that half circle, and I'm just going to use the same scrap that I was using here. And usually it's just a little bit smaller. Actually, that looks like it's about the perfect size. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it into this little rounded, kind of a half of an oval, and put that down. Oh, that looks like a mouth, doesn't it? Okay, now for the ears, what I like to do is to take a piece, and here I might choose one that, this is just basically text. I'm going to fold it in half so that I only have to make one cut. And I want the ears to be about the same width of his head. Okay, so I'm going to make it about this big. Now, that doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to eyeball it. And I'm going to make kind of this rounded teardrop shape. And I can put each of those on either side of his head. Okay. Those look a little big to me, so I'm going to trim them down. So I want to line them up. And I'm just going to cut them down a little bit so that they're a little smaller. All right. Ooh, I could do that. I think I will. Okay. Actually, it would go on this side. Can move it around, play with it to see how you like it. Okay, now the last part is just the body. And I'm going to come in with, see if I can find a piece. Oh, I think this is interesting. Looks like it's part of the TV guide. All right, and you know what? It is about the right size, so I'm just going to trim it a little bit. What I like to do is line it up with the corner. And then I'm just going to cut a section of it. It's like I'm cutting a little triangle off. And then I can lay that underneath and overlap it. Now, at this point, you can have fun moving it around and deciding what way you want him to be looking. And I think this time maybe I'll have him kind of looking up like this. Okay, but you can move his head around. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to move him down like this. Okay? All right. What do you guys think? Okay, so then next what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some glue stick, and I'm just going to glue those pieces down. I'm going to want to use, oh, and this one isn't, it looks like it is, we're out of glue stick on that one. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to do the lowest piece, the bottom piece first. So I'm just going to simply move these other pieces off to the side. And when I put glue stick down, I usually just sort of go right along the edge. I want to take my other hand to anchor that piece down so that it doesn't tear. And then I'm going to line up the corner of my newspaper with the corner of my construction paper and smooth that out. All right, next I'm going to take his head, and I think I decided I was going to have him sort of leaning this way this time. So the next piece I'm going to use will be the main part of his head. I'll go around the edges. Okay, next I'm going to put the top part of his mouth, or his nose. And I overlap his head so that I've got, so it's kind of toward the bottom. All right, and then I've got room here at the very, very bottom underneath his nose for the mouth. Okay. And then for the last two pieces, his ears, I can either lay them down right next to him, or I can pull up the edge and lay it underneath. But I'm just going to kind of play with how I want those ears to go. Okay. And put in my two ears on either side. And again, remember, those go sort of right where, oh, that's glued down shut. So I'm just going to have this go off to the side. Now, you'll notice part of it goes off the page a little bit, and that's okay. When I'm done, I can make some choices if I want to keep it like this, or I could even cut it, because if you notice, a lot of art will go off the page, and it's amazing how our eyes sort of finish off what isn't there. Okay, but in this case right now, before I make any decisions, I'm just going to leave it. Okay? So now that I have my cow in newspaper with the basic shapes down on my construction paper here, I've got all kinds of options. Like I said before, we're going to just sort of use the materials we have around the house. If you have crayons, that's a great way to color in. You could color in all different colors of spots. If you have markers, that works great too. With this example, I used construction paper. I had a little bit of black, some scraps, and I cut out these sort of irregular, kind of like ovals, but they're not perfect ovals, because often the spots are more of these more irregular shapes. And then what I wanted to show you was along the sides of the face to help define that face. What I did is I used the side of the paper and cut out just sort of a half circle on each side. And that's the way that I was able to get these two spots defining his face. Since those spots are black, you're going to want to go back. And what I did was just made a circle, a simple circle, using, you can use white crayon. If you have pastels, white pastels work nice. Or even if you have a white gel pen, that works really good too. And then you'll notice I added a tiny little eyelash on top and these little dots in the center to show a little sparkle. Then what I did is I went back with a pink crayon and then lightly went over his nose so that he had this nice, cute pink nose and mouth. Okay, here's another example where I went back with acrylic paint. If you have acrylic paints, that's fun to use. And what's nice about those is they're opaque, meaning they cover up what's underneath it, so you can't see as much of the text or the patterns of the newspaper. The other thing is you can go back and do add some patterns with a different color, a lighter color. Like here you can see there's a little bit of pink on the turquoise or turquoise on green. And it's a fun way to experiment with different patterns and colors. And what I'm going to show you today is we are going to use watercolor. And what's fun about using watercolor is these colors will be nice and transparent. So what that means is they'll be see-through and you can see the colors underneath them. All right, let me get set up here with, I've got my paints. Any kind of watercolors will work. What I've got is this set that I think I got at Michael's. If you've got Praying or Crayola, any of those work. And what I like to do is start off by waking all my colors up just by adding a dot on each one that I'm going to use. And what that does is it sort of softens up that hard palette so it'll be nice and moist and ready for us to swirl our brush around and get lots of color. Okay, so what I'm going to do is make some decisions about, well, I know I'm going to start off with, I want him to have a pink nose. So I'm going to really swirl my brush around, getting lots and lots of color. And I'm just going to go in and start marking that area in. And if I need to, I can add more water. What's fun about watercolor too is you can control the color of the watercolor based on how much water you use. So for example, you can get different shades of the same color by adding water. So if you want it to be lighter, you add more water. If you want it to be darker, you're just going to have a little bit of water and really swirl it around. But look at how nice and bright that is. And you can still see some of the word search letters underneath there. Okay, now I'm going to go back. I'm going to make him colorful with all different colors, the spots. Here I've got this turquoise that I'll go in on the side. Maybe he'll have a turquoise spot over here too, going over some of the comic. Okay. All right, now I can go back and make some decisions. Ooh, this purple would be nice. I'm gonna give him a really big spot on the back of his back. And I want to be careful and go right along the edge and then just make this irregular shape as big as you want. You know what might be fun too is I could mix a couple colors. So now I'm going to go in the bottom with more of this mulberry color. So I've got this magenta, a mulberry with the purple, getting different shades. Let's see, how about a green one? When I'm using watercolor, I always want to have fresh water, and I also want to have a paper towel close by. All right, so I'm going to add a spot over here, maybe another green one over here. And actually, I'm going to give him a green eye over here. All right, and how about one more? We'll do one more of these magenta spots up on the top of his head here. Okay, so if you are using watercolor, I want to caution you, that water on the newspaper is going to be super, super fragile. So don't try to go over with crayon or marker or anything else until it's completely dry. In fact, what you might want to do is do this part and then tune in with me for the next part of the video the next day so that we know it's super, super dry. So I have one here that I painted ahead of time, and I know that it's very, very dry. What I like to do is take the back of my hand and just make sure that it is not damp or cool, because otherwise it's not quite ready. Okay, so what I'm going to use are pastels. If you don't have pastels, really markers would work if it's super dry. Crayons work great too. But I'm going to go in now and I'm going to make some fun patterns. So I might start just with a white. And I think I've told you this before, where pastels are great. They've got lots and lots of pigment. They're really soft. And so a lot of times they're brighter than regular crayons, and they you can layer them and even blend them together. But in this case, I'm going to press hard, and I'll show you too. This piece is just a little piece because I've used this set for a long, long time, and yet it still works great because I just sort of grab it with my finger and my thumb. And I'm going to make these little smile lines in a pattern going down. You know what I think is fun too? Is sometimes going past the little dot. Makes it sort of interesting. Okay, and now maybe I'll come in. Look at how tiny this is, but I still can grip it and get some good color. Maybe over here I'll do just a checkered pattern by going down and across. Okay. And again, this is an example of what I'm choosing to do. What's really fun is I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. The sky's the limit. I can't wait to see what materials you used. And even if you use the same materials as me, it'll be interesting to see what yours comes out looking like. Because we can use our imagination and just add whatever patterns we want. All right, now I'm going to go in and maybe I'm going to use that white again. And let's see, how about if I go just sort of this little swirly line down here. Whoa, they're really soft, so you got to grip them hard at the end, at the bottom there. All right. And now, let's see, how about, I wonder if I can get a green to show up here just with some little dots. Oh, I can. Now, notice how this came up a little bit. It's not glued down too well, so I'm going to want to go back later with some glue. But in the meantime, I'm going to anchor it down with my other hand. And there again, I'm adding some dots outside because I think that's kind of fun. I do that over here too with the pink. Have some of those pink coming off. Okay, now finally, what I do when I'm working with pastels, I'll often have black be the last color I use. Because what I often tell students is that black can be really bossy. And sometimes if I put black down and I rub my hand over it accidentally, it smudges all the other colors and I might end up with it on my clothes. So I want to be careful. But remember how those eyes were right here, kind of going off of the cow's head a little bit. And I'm just going to draw those eyes and then later add a little eyelash on top. All right, how's that looking? And then I can do the little nose. This is almost like a quotation mark down here. You guys see that? Where I've got a little dot and a tail coming down. All right, what do you think? So that is an example of one cow that you can do. There are many, many variations that I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with. I encourage you to email me pictures at kk_engel@yahoo.com. And I look forward to making more videos for you guys to keep you busy during this time. All right, take care, everybody.